how can we have, or how could there be a perfect God when we live in this very terrible, in many ways, world?
Evil is a mystery. It's not a problem. And in war, when everything gets stripped down, you see almost the pure face of evil, but you also see incredible acts of goodness and kindness. Because to carry out an act of kindness in a war, especially when you reach out to the other who's demonized, is almost suicidal. There's almost a willful acceptance of self-sacrifice. And those stand in very, very stark relief, so that both good and evil almost become palpable. I mean, when the shells, so there was no running water in Sarajevo in individual dwellings. You had to go to what the UN had created, water collection sites or taps where people would line up and get water. Remember, we're being shelled 24 hours a day. And the Serbs would find out when the crowds were gathering at those and then bomb them and shell them. And we're talking about 90 millimeter tank rounds, 155 howitzers, I mean, really heavy stuff. And I've seen it. I mean, it's, the bodies are split in half and it's just awful. And so you almost had these waves of death emanating from these epicenters. But then you saw these families and friends frantically trying to reach out to friends and loved ones and there was these concentric waves of good and evil that are very real. So yeah, I mean, I think that I was close to the great radical priest Daniel Berrigan, who went to federal prison for burning draft records during the Vietnam War in Catonsville in Maryland. And I asked him to define faith. I said, how do you define faith? And he said, the belief that the good draws to it the good, even if empirically everything around you says otherwise. And I think having come out of conflicts and wars and distress situations, that's true. I mean, figures like Oscar Romero, I covered in El Salvador, Martin Luther King, these are figures that draw the good to the good. And yet, there's that old Christian adage that when you make a commitment as a Christian, it's called bearing the cross, and the cross is ultimately what they kill you on. If you read, I think David Garrow wrote a very fine biography of King called Bearing the Cross. King, like Malcolm X, at the end, they were very aware that it was over, that they weren't going to live very long. And yet they held fast to that kind of moral and spiritual imperative. I mean, essentially, they carried their cross. I mean, I don't think it's an accident that I would argue two of our greatest prophets were both deeply religious, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. Because I think that when you confront radical evil at that level, which has the capacity not only to kill you, but almost probably will kill you, then you have a fealty to a world that, I don't like the word spiritual, but a world that is rooted in the sacred.
Speaking of evil, you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation when I asked you about America, the Farewell Tour, that sadism was something emblematic of the
sexual sadism.
Oh, sexual sadism. Okay.
Well, sadism, but particularly, I mean, we're a pornified culture.
Well, then maybe this isn't directly connected to evil.
By the way, this is where something I will agree with the Christian right on, and that I'm against.
This is now kind of a bit of a non sequitur from what we were speaking about, but why is this? Why is sexual sadism emblematic?
Because it's about turning human beings into objects. So I wrote a chapter out of kink.com in San Francisco, which is a BDSM community. At the time, they were housed in the old armory in the Mission District, and people could pay. They could call in, and literally women would be waterboarded. I mean, women, and I interviewed the women who were carrying out these acts, and they were beaten, and it was that sexual sadism is always a part of disintegrating societies. It's the eroticizing violence towards others, and particularly the vulnerable, and particularly women. I mean, I saw it in war. I mean, look, in war, the only thing that's produced in greater numbers than prostituted girls and women are corpses, because the men aren't there, the men are dead. And sexual violence is very much a part of war too.
What is the connection, though, between the sexual sadism and the decline of empires?
Well, it's a breakdown. It's a breakdown of any communal solidarity, and it is a warped. It's a warped kind of desire in order to fill ecstatic needs by punishing, beating, abusing, degrading another.
In which empire, what evidence is there? I'm not suggesting that there isn't any, that it has been connected to decline.
Rome. Look at the last Caligula, Nero, all this kind of stuff.
What was happening then?
Well, it wasn't. I mean, Tiberius, throwing people off of cliffs and, terrible physical. I mean, there was actually, at one point, I can't remember which emperor it was, in the Colosseum, they reenacted the rape of Europa by the bull, and they put a woman inside a leather bull and had the actual bull mount her and rip her apart. I mean, Rome was pretty awful.
How, if at all, do you see this issue of sadism, if not sexual sadism, as playing out in Israel and Palestine over the last 2 years?
Well, sadism comes through dehumanization. So you dehumanize the other, and then the other is, not only are they less than you, but they have no actual worth. And they become, in the words of Israeli politicians, a human animal. I think that was Gantz who said that. But and then they get treated like animals. I mean, the Nazis did it. I mean, but it's a way of denying another's humanity, another person's worth, another person's right to exist. And that unleashes a kind of sadism. I mean, sadism was part of every war that I covered. I mean, sadism was, because when you can kill with impunity, it just becomes kind of boring just to kill. So like in Bosnia, I went into towns and saw where the Serbs had crucified Muslims on the sides of barns or split them open. Or, I mean, even in the war in Salvador, the death squads would mutilate the bodies. I mean, they would cut off their genitals and put it in their mouth, and it's all sadistic. My uncle was in the South Pacific in World War II. And the Japanese were horrible, but so were the Americans. I mean, he carried out acts of sadism. I mean, came home and drank himself to death. But sadism is very, very much a part of war, because war begins from the point of dehumanization of the other.
Because it's so difficult for a human to kill and harm other people while thinking of them as humans rather than objects?
Yeah. Although you train killers, so you use operant conditioning, the same way you train a dog, repeatedly. So if you look at boot camp, it's about operant conditioning. It's about inculcating an instinctive response. That's how you create killers. I don't think most people have a natural tendency to kill. I think it has to be induced.
There's an irony here with anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
And what is Trump's relationship to Israel? Is it just a continuation of the Biden administration? Is it significantly different? Is it similar?
It's not significantly. Rhetorically, it's different. So Biden would pay lip service to the two-state solution. Trump doesn't do that. In that sense, Trump's more honest. I mean, there's no secret within the centers of power, Democratic or Republican, what Israel's doing in Gaza and what its goals are. It's all completely. But Trump endorses it in a way publicly that Biden doesn't. I mean, he talks about the Riviera, turning it into a Riviera on the Mediterranean and stuff. I mean, Biden wouldn't do this, but at the same time, Biden was a full supporter of the genocidal project. And knew, or at least, I don't know how much Biden knew at the end, but certainly his administration, Blinken and others knew, and Blinken, it comes out of a very strong Zionist household, that the goal was ethnically cleansing. That's not a secret.
I mean, that seemed to be one of the major motives that you attributed to the Christian right, ethnic cleansing and white superiority. But I would have thought that for somebody like Biden or the contemporary mainstream Democratic Party that is in lockstep with him, it's more a global security, American dominance, securing our foothold in the Middle East sort of concern.
I can tell you, I spent 7 years in the Middle East, and the perpetuation of the genocide has not contributed to American security. It's destabilized the region tremendously. American allies, King Abdullah in Jordan, the Sisi government in Egypt are in tremendous trouble. If the Palestinians are ethnically cleansed, especially if they're pushed into the northern Sinai in Egypt or out of the West Bank into Jordan, I think those regimes will have a very hard time maintaining power. It has turned the Muslim world, 1.2 billion Muslims or something, against us, and it's going to create blowback. I mean, you can't decimate families on this level and not have blowback. And that worries me, because I think what will happen is you'll get something like a 9/11 and then Trump will seize on that to really shut down the last vestiges of our open society.
Why is this, and correct me if you think I'm wrong here, but it strikes me that the dominant narrative explaining America's involvement in Israel is that they're our crucial ally in the Middle East, so we need to defend them. Why is this narrative dominant, if you agree with me that it might be in the mainstream?
Because the Zionists own Congress. They have tremendous influence in the media. It's not true coming out of the Middle East. Our unwavering, uncritical support for Israel, you know who actually said it once and then backtracked as fast as he could was David Petraeus. No, everybody in the State Department and the military knows that, or especially if they spent significant time in the Middle East, that our unequivocal backing of Israel is not beneficial to our national interests.
How does this small country exert such pressure on the United States? How do they?
Because the Israel
Congress?
lobby is quite wealthy, and because it's bought most of our elected officials. Biden received more money from AIPAC than any other U.S. senator. He holds the record, and he hasn't been in the Senate. He wasn't in the Senate for 10 years, 12. I don't know how long it's been. They buy them, and if you stand up to them, like Jamal Bowman, they spent $11 million to get him ousted from his House seat. And that's a long track record. I mean, they pushed out Fulbright. Fulbright held hearings about AIPAC raising money as a nonprofit, and the money coming back to Israel lobby groups. I can't remember the exact details, but they mounted a fierce campaign to push Fulbright out of the Senate, and they succeeded. So it's not new to challenge the Israel lobby, given the deep pockets of the Israel lobby, is. They will punish you. You will get pushed out, and it's money. But, it's not just Israel. I mean, Goldman Sachs. I mean, the whole system's for sale.
Norman Finkelstein has been on the show a number of times. I'm talking with him tomorrow morning, actually.
I like Norm.
Yeah, Norman's great. And he attributes, I think, a lot of the success, well, I don't know, at least some of the success of Israel in this domain to its intelligence capabilities and blackmail. He called them like the dark arts in one of our recent conversations. But do you see...
Every country does that. Russians are, I think, the king of it. I mean...
Really?
Blackmail? Yeah. Every country. We do it.
Well, I know that everybody does it. I'm just surprised that Russians are the king of it. But first...
Now, the Russians have supposedly got it down to a science. I don't know, but I'm not of no direct experience with it, but apparently they're...
Well, let's come back to that in a moment. But do you think that the Mossad may play a non-negligible role in American Congress as it pertains
I don't think
to
Congress.
Israeli
No, I think
policy?
it's the lobby, but there are close ties between the Mossad and the American intelligence community, without question. Yeah, I mean they share virtually. My understanding is they pretty much share most information.
Before we return back to Israel, what have you heard about Russian intelligence?
The blackmail is, I mean, honey traps are famous.
What's a honey trap?
It's where you get a very good-looking woman and you're some like dumpy middle-aged diplomat, and suddenly this gorgeous 25-year-old wants to sleep with you. I mean, that's pretty common in Moscow. Yeah, I've heard that the FSB is. Look, I'm talking anecdotally. I don't,
Right.
but I heard that. I don't think blackmail. Everyone does it. I mean, Richard Goldstein probably got blackmailed. He wrote the great report. He's a Zionist, Jewish, of course, and then suddenly disowned it. And I know Norman, and I think a lot of us think, well, they got to him. We don't know how they got to him, but blackmail is a very common way that Israel uses to shut down their critics.
Has anybody ever attempted to blackmail you? Or I mean, maybe you wouldn't want to say it on the air.
No, but people have tried to recruit me. I mean, Central America, both the Cubans and the CIA were trying to recruit reporters because, like in the war in Salvador, we traveled with both sides. We're very rare. So we traveled with the FMLN guerrillas. So we saw things. We knew numbers. We knew the kinds of weapons they had. We knew where they were. I mean, obviously I didn't do it, but both the Cubans made approaches and the CIA.
Can I ask